Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Dear beloved community members, happy to have you all here. We're trying something a little different this time, and I'll start getting right into it. The topic we're going to be discussing is let's listen. Let's have an opportunity to listen to another voice, a voice that we don't often hear at the masjid. And the purpose of why we're doing this. The very first thing that I thought of was there's a very beautiful incident from the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A youth from the Quraysh comes to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asks him to permit him to sin, to commit a sin. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't just shun him. He sat him down and he listened to what he was saying, and then he counseled him appropriately. And I take that as an opportunity to also just sit and be able to listen, rather than just have a preconceived notion in our head, an answer already in our head about a certain problem. Because the truth is, oftentimes reality is a lot more complicated. There's a lot of different factors involved. So that was number one. Another reason why I wanted to have this conversation was, it's a little corny, but I got married last year. And In Sha Allah someday I'd like to have children of my own. And it gravely concerns me what kind of an environment they're going to be growing up in. Because myself and my wife, we're both immigrants to this country. We didn't grow up here. We didn't go to a public school here. So just like you were applying to college, who'd you talk to? Someone who had been to college. When you wanted to learn prayer, you talked to somebody who prayed. So inshallah, there's benefit in listening to people who have experience that we could all benefit from. And another opportunity, I see a lot of younger people here, younger than even the people sitting at this table. I think they could listen to and take comfort from what they have gone through and find some points that would be applicable, inshallah ta'ala. So the format of this panel is going to be another, in the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to have a conversation amongst the panelists on certain topics and questions that I could come up with and share with them. For this duration, I'd encourage everyone, if you have any questions, kindly keep to yourself for that time. We'll just try to go over what we had thought of would be of benefit, inshallah. And then we'll go into a questions and answers session where you could raise your hand and ask a question, and inshallah, if it's directed to somebody, that's great. If it's general, we could see whoever wishes to answer it. So with that little introduction, I'll first get in quickly, very briefly introduce myself. My name is Talha Siddiqui, and I currently work in the tech consulting space. I've been out of college for about 5 years now, and I really like the outdoors, and I'm happy to be in Colorado because it has plenty of it. I was born and raised in Pakistan. My family is still in Pakistan, and my parents are there. And I've been in the US for about 9 years now. I, alhamdulillah, got my undergrad degree here and got married last year. That was the gist of my life. And inshallah, very briefly, I'll give it to the panelists here to introduce themselves. Why don't you introduce yourself, Camelia? Okay.
Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Camelia. So I just graduated from Carter School of Mines, Petroleum Engineering. And I love outdoors also. That's why I moved to Colorado also. And I'm Indonesian. And in the US, I moved here when I was 12 years old. So I went to high school and junior high school back in California. and I moved here to Golden for college. So yeah, I spent half of my life in Indonesia, half of my life here in the US. So after I graduate, I plan to work in Texas, In Sha Allah, as an engineering. So yeah.
That's great.
Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name's Ilman. You've probably seen me around here. My dad's Daddy. He's not here right now, but he's in and out all the time. I just recently graduated from the Colorado School of Mines, bachelor's degree, mechanical engineering. Still looking for a job, so if anyone wants to help me out. Yeah, I grew up here in Golden area. I've seen this community grow since I've been going to the Golden Mosque since I was maybe 4 or 3 years old, so I understand how there's always new people coming in, and people always come back and say that Golden community is probably one of the best communities that they've ever been a part of. And for the guys who are here right now, you guys should really get to experience it, I guess, and learn about your neighbors.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. My name is Adam Salandejo. I'm in 10th grade. I'm a sophomore. I go to Golden High School. I was born and raised here. I moved to Golden when I was about 8 years old. And yeah.
That's excellent. So yeah, we've got quite a variety here. You're all Indonesians, but you're not related, right? Okay, yeah. So that still gives, but you can still see each one of them did not grow up in the same, like environment, and they're not in the same place in their lives. So it's a variety here, and I'd like to ask our most elder panelist, well, she's not elder than me, but tell us about, you've been in college and you also grew up in California, Colorado, and I believe international as well. What was a very profound and moving experience in your last formative years that brought you closer to Islam?
So that's a very big question. Most profound experience, I would say in my graduate studies while I was in my last year. So it was after an event, international school event. So my friend and I, we have a conversation, and then it's starting getting really deep. So it's about hijab. So at that time, I didn't wear hijab, and alhamdulillah, I wear a hijab now. But during that time, the question was, so why are you not wearing a hijab? I've seen you praying, I've seen you going to the mosque and everything. And in the end, the conclusion was, his conversation really struck me. It was how Allah will appreciate you more if you don't find a job, but you wear a hijab. And then after that conversation, I talked to my dad, and then he knows that, especially as an international student, we always talk about it's hard getting a job as international student or things like that. With hijab, you have that another burden in you. And after that, I also called one of my close friends I met in Houston. She's a recent hijabi. I met her over the summer while I was working. And then I just call her, and then after that, I make a dua. And at that moment, it was the first time where I was at my lowest point. That whatever happened, actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be I work in the US. Actually, I don't mind working back in Indonesia. So it was at that time where I just ikhlas, just that time, just give me the right path and everything. And after that, that was in September. And in October, I got a call, and alhamdulillah, I got a job. And then when I told my friend this, the same person, he said, see, that's how you should be thankful to Allah. And then, so I guess me wearing hijab is just being thankful for everything. I remember that night at my lowest point, just, okay, maybe this is the right time, and I want to be thankful. And that was my profound moment.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Certainly, as men, oftentimes we don't have that burden of being out in public and experiencing what it's like to be visibly Muslim. SubhanAllah, that was a very beautiful story and experience. I will say, I know somebody, a sister, when I was living in California, she was in college and her aunt would tell her that don't wear a hijab. This is going to be corporate career suicide. But she was still very determined, and she still went for it. And alhamdulillah, she's very successful. She's at the University of Southern California, and it's amazing. There will be so many negative voices, telling us to not do one thing or the other. But inshallah, if we stick to our deen, that's the most important thing. Moving to the next thing, our next candidate. I want to ask. You went through high school, you went through college, and
Right.
could you tell us what was a challenge that you faced, and how did you overcome it in terms of your deen?
A challenge that I faced? I think trying to balance the kind of Muslim aspect of my life, which I actually didn't really understand yet growing up in high school, which I honestly don't think that high school kids, or I guess some can, but personally I couldn't, when I reflect back on it, I couldn't really grasp kind of the more grand aspects of Islam and what it means to be a Muslim. So I was kind of confused especially in the kind of the environment that you're thrown in high school. And I think Adam can talk more about that since he's in high school right now. But even when I was in high school, it was kind of tough because it's easy if you don't have a solid base and if you don't have a solid foundation and you're kind of questioning things yourself, it's easy to be pushed around by negative things in that environment. And I think that's what a lot of parents are scared of, honestly. But
Let me ask a follow-up question to that, just in the middle.
Right.
What would you say, how different was it, high school social environment to a college environment? Because I feel like there's a lot of people who've attended college or are
Right.
attending college but haven't been to a high school here.
Well, if people in the audience can remember when they were in high school, it's kind of, everything is kind of blown up and everything is the end of the world. So any little thing that happens is just kind of magnified. And I think it's important to teach our high school kids and middle school kids to work through adversity. It's not going to be perfect like 100 times or 100% of the way, but if they're able to work through their problems and not get frustrated, and they can trust themselves, most importantly, I think we can set them up for a better foundation. And once they're older and then once they're around my age, then they can, I think, grasp the concepts better.
Yeah, that's very true. So you made a good point. Be able to support them in that critical time. So I want to ask Adam something. Adam. Yeah. So the question is, in this, now you're in high school. So yourself or any of your Muslim friends, what have they experienced that was a support that they got that was very beneficial in this critical time?
Wait, could you repeat that? Sorry.
So for yourself or any of your friends in their high school period, any example of a support that they got You know, maybe it was from their parents, maybe it's their siblings, or their just friends at the masjid or the masjid itself. That really helped in that critical time. You know, like as Ilman was saying.
I think talking to like Hadi and Muzammil back there, the same age as me, we kind of go through the similar problems, and sometimes we talk about what we do. Like a challenge in high school, I would say for me is since I go to a public school and not Islamic school, I think is getting the 5 prayer or getting Dhuhr in, because in the wintertime especially, Dhuhr runs in during the school day. So I think a key part of that is talking to your teachers and telling them that you need to borrow their classroom just for a couple minutes to pray, and then also telling your parents about what's happening at school. And for me, that's how I got through the low points in my life.
That's very good. And I'll say something that in the workforce at an office, getting dhuhr in is still very hard. It doesn't get any easy. You're looking for an empty conference room or something, or some kind of an empty hallway, searching in the building until you find your spot, and that's your go-to. But I'll come back to Camellia for another question. I mean, we're hearing the perspective of somebody younger than us, and you know, you've gone through a lot more maturity with your age and experiences. What would you want to do differently for, In Sha Allah, your kids or the next generation when you teach them than what you were taught? So you were taught a certain way, but maybe you're thinking, you know, I want to do this certain thing. I want to tell them about Sira. I want to, like, you know, accompany them and go for Umrah or something. What ideas or so maybe you were thought of?
Okay. So I grew up in California, and it's actually a small town in Bakersfield. And I didn't go to Sunday schools. So one thing I would change is I would want to live in a community where there is a Sunday school for my kids to grow to, and build that environment, that friendship that maybe Ilman and Adam has throughout these years. Because growing up, that time it was my sister and I are the only few Muslims at the public school. And then, so that's one thing, the Sunday school. And then another thing is, from December, we have the conference, the Indonesian Malaysian Islamic Conference. And I met a group of friends, they're from Dallas. And they have this close-knit community, the teenagers, the college students and everything, and even the one who just got recently married. So I want my kids to have that sense of that friendship, that bonding, that maybe I didn't have that before. So finding that community definitely is a big thing, because where I was from in Bakersfield, it was just the Indonesian Muslim community that we have.
Thank you so much. I'll come to both of you, and any of you can answer this one. I think Camellia is emphasizing that we should have a stronger sense of community, place where you can come to, and both of you experienced that. But how would you improve that? What would you want to see done more of, or done differently at ICG or wherever community?
Well, for me, I think one of the biggest problems right now as in the Islamic community, and I think I see it more the Indonesian community as well, is there's so much kind of distrust between the adults and the children, I guess, or like kids my age. It's because the kids are afraid of being judged, and they feel like they cannot express themselves fully in front of their parents. And so then they end up trying to hide a lot of things. And that's where a lot of the friction and miscommunication comes from. So events like this, where you guys are all here listening to me and Adam and talk, is good, because then we have a platform that we can speak and what we think about it. Because not a lot of the times we don't get asked about what we think about topics, and like we might be young, but maybe you guys can gain perspective from you, and you guys can, or we can gain perspective from you, and you can gain perspective from us, just from having an open dialogue where we don't judge each other, and it's just not automatic jumping to conclusions, I guess, as well, is another thing. And so I think we're making a step in the right direction.
I think that's, oh, okay. Camelia would like to add, please.
Maybe another thing is to have the involvement for the high school students and want to come to the ICG. So I noticed we have a library, so we have books in the female sections also. So maybe have general books also, let's say SAT books or ACT books or GRE to prep for college, and have the college students here volunteer to prep for SATs and everything. So the high school students, oh, we have a free SAT class I can come to, it's in ICG. So that, again, that bonding, and then encourage them to come here that, oh, maybe there's an SAT class. Before that, maybe we can read a Quran just for 5 and 10 minutes. Just an idea.
Right. And yeah. And a lot of the times, like, it doesn't have to be tied to Islamic things when we get together. It can be, we can play sports or whatever. But as long as we are in or hanging out with people who are Muslim, then we have the opportunity to remind ourselves about that kind of Muslim aspects of our lives.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, whether the activity is getting together to play a sport or just meeting up to have a cup of tea or whatever, you know, the fact that everyone is Muslim in that gathering just kind of reinforces and supports our Islamic rituals that we perform together. I wanted to ask, you know, you guys are emphasizing, mashallah, like the importance of friends that you had. Maybe a story or an experience of a friend. Camille's already shared one, so it's got to be both of you. A friend, a conversation, or something that, you know, profoundly impacted you and brought you together as friends and made your iman go up or something.
Adam's my best friend, so. A story about a friend that's.
Or like an activity that helped you bond together.
What do we do together? We watch football together. I can't really think of a specific occasion, I guess, but I think hanging out with people who are like us makes us more open, because when we hang out with our people who aren't Muslim or aren't Indonesian, then we kind of have to restrict a part of ourselves in order to fit in or something, you know. And sometimes it can be scary to open up to people like that in that way. So if I'm hanging out with Adam, then I can talk to him about anything, and he understands all the jokes we make about like going to mosque or something or stuff like that. So that's, I guess, is a good example.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So those were very positive things. You want to add something? Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I guess this last Ramadan, I really kind of opened up to my friends about being Muslim. And during Ramadan, they would ask me, so you fast every single day? And I said, yes. And they always ask, can you at least drink water? And I said, no. So then I think when they kind of found out about this, they were kind of really fascinated, and they also asked me about other things, kind of like my 5 daily prayers. And when you tell non-Muslim people about what you do every day, I think they kind of respect you a little bit more, because I think like in this country, kind of like Christians, they don't really like, it's not like strictly like following it, I guess. I don't know how to say it, but when they see a Muslim kind of like, oh, you pray 5 times a day, you fast pretty often, I think it's kind of, they kind of find that fascinating and they kind of respect you a little bit more.
Yeah, that's certainly true. There's regardless of whatever like religion or walk of life you have, I mean, people admire if you are a person of principles and you are dedicated and you're not just, doing it because everyone's doing it around you. So if you stick to something, I think this culture really has a good aspect to admiring that. So, another question I wanted to bring up was, we're talking, mashallah, about a lot of positive experiences, a lot of positive interactions, things that have been encouraging. I'm sure it's not always like that. There might have been something that was discouraging, and you don't need to name anybody, but just say, what was something that discouraged you from being amongst Muslims or coming to the masjid? Anybody?
Well, for me, I think when we have lectures talking about kind of the not negative aspects of Islam, but more intense and more, I don't know, some of the lectures, they have kind of scary aspects, I guess, of Islam that that aren't really, what do you call it? I don't know how to really explain it. But I just don't think that it's a great platform to kind of spread that kind of message when we should be talking about more of the beautiful aspects of Islam. And some of the language that the lecturers use sometimes is very controversial or is very has a lot of negative impact on it. And obviously they don't do it on purpose, but just the very use of those words and that kind of tone and that kind of approach to things, very aggressive, it kind of puts people off even if they didn't mean to, because it's associative and there's a lot of emotion in it. And that's sort of some of the things that, and of course there are some aspects of Islam that don't really mesh well with the society that we're in, and it can be uncomfortable to talk about, which is understandable.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in what you said, and being somebody who volunteers and takes the opportunity to deliver a sermon or sermons for Jum'ah, I'll take that advice seriously. I think that's very important, and anybody who's elder in the community should really think about this. Sometimes our choice of words might be really poor, or the concept in our head might be very at odds with the country we live in. And if I'm brave enough, let me just give an example. Polygamy. I mean, Islamically, it sounds, it's fair. There's nothing wrong. But we know there's another aspect of Islam that is observing the law of the land. And if you're going to break the law to do something that Islam still permits, you should think twice and you should consult with somebody who's more knowledgeable about this. Nonchalantly talking about this, making fun of it, jokingly or something, it's a pretty serious aspect. Especially in this culture, it's if you're going to talk about it, it's going to be taken very seriously. So something like that, I think it's a very good point. Any of you maybe? MashaAllah. I think Ilman has something on his mind. Okay, well, that's all right. So, in your experiences coming to Sunday school, was there a teacher, was there a practice of a teacher that was very nice, that really helped you come to the masjid? Something that person did that attracted you to come to the masjid?
I think Mansur does a good job of teaching the Quran. That was my most recent teacher. And I think I've had so many Quran teachers over the years that some were good and some were not that good. But I think what makes him good is he actually makes you kind of want to learn about it more and doesn't threaten you with punishments if you get a Quran recitation wrong. So kind of more positive reinforcement that he does is pretty good, and he doesn't make you feel stupid if you get something wrong, and he tries to explain to you in a very level-headed way. I think a lot of people can learn from that.
Just adding on, Mansoor is still my teacher for the Quran class, and just like what Ilman said, he's very understanding, and he also talks about the tafsir, the meaning behind what I'm reciting, and when he does that, I think it's kind of fascinating. It kind of appeals to me, and also if you're honest with him and you tell him that you couldn't memorize, he's understanding, and like Ilman said, he doesn't exactly threaten to punish you. So.
Right.
That's very good. And I think we're kind of pushing against our time here, so let me turn this question, which will be our last in this conversation. I want to ask Camelia, as somebody who's going into the professional field now, going to Houston, and obviously you're stepping into a more mature, more serious point in your life. What do you see, how do you feel about the changing cultural and social norms of this country? How does that make you feel? And what do you think about it, if you want to share some thoughts?
Okay, so changing cultural and social norms.
You grew up here too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure over the years.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the current presidency. Anything.
Okay, so let's say while we were in high school, we have to think that we have, I don't know, I have this feeling, oh, they're wearing this kind of clothing. Or, so just trying to make sure you have that your own identity. There's a good, from the halakha last weekend, there's a good quote that if you're doing the good thing or the right thing, you'll always be the minority. And so that quote really resonates with me, and especially with the cultural and social norms right now. Let's say how we dress, with the tight clothing, or let's say in high school I was in the tennis team, everyone wears tank top, and then I'm the only one wearing the long sleeves. So having that own identity, it's the main thing. Regarding the workplace, let's say right now I'm still very new as a hijabi. My experience so far professionally, I've volunteered with the Society of Petroleum Engineers in Denver this Tuesday and then 2 weeks ago. Professionally, they're very open, and although there's that time when, let's say last weekend when I have a meeting with one of the music composer, there's always that someone who's not comfortable, talking to you with the hijabi. So facing that, making sure that you have your own identity, own who you are, and with the norms of this country, America itself, it's made of immigrants, right? And Muslim made up of the 1% of the population. So make sure, be that first Muslim you've met. In high school, maybe you're the only Muslims that your friends will only met, and be that good examples, and we'll try to do that in the workplace also, inshallah.
Yeah, I think that's a very good advice, and we'll come to some questions later. I think it's very nice. I want to point out from being in the workplace for a long time, compared to in high school or in college, the workplace, alhamdulillah, in this country provides a lot of opportunities. There's actually laws that do protect you from any kind of thing, and you can use those channels, and people are actually very sensitive to offend anyone. That being said, bad instances do happen, but I'm always reminded of the fact that if I were a minority, a religious minority in Pakistan, my experience would be very bad, to say the least. I had friends, I went to a Catholic school, a middle school in Pakistan, And I had friends and teachers, and I could see from their examples, like their lives were actually very difficult. And in comparison to that, I think about my life here. Alhamdulillah, I have so much freedom to openly speak, to openly, talk about Islam even with my colleagues. So there are things that alhamdulillah, we're very blessed with and very grateful for. And inshallah, with that, I will end this conversation and open it to anybody in the audience if you have any questions. Dr. Amiri, please.
I want to thank the panelists for sharing their views with us. Your comments prove to everyone in the community that there's a lot of wisdom in the youth, and we need to be listening to them more frequently. We need to be engaging them more frequently. So thank you all for your views, and thank you for all the youth that attended tonight, made a special effort to attend tonight. My one big question for the youth is the following. What should ICG do to attract more Muslims to the Islamic Center? A lot of Muslims don't come here. What do we have to do to bring more of them here? What kinds of events or things that we need to do to bring them here? And the smaller question is, I would love to hear not just the panelists, but everyone's views in this space here, everyone's views on the format that we often follow. Typically, the format is a lecture format. Should we vary the format to is a more panel discussion, interactive panel discussion, more engaging? Should we be adding videos to our evenings? Watch a video and discuss it. I'm sure there are a lot of other types of ideas that are out there that I can't think of. Again, thank you for your views.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just repeat the question. Dr. Amir asked a very good question. What could we do differently? Because there are a lot of Muslims, because of School of Mines and in the surrounding areas. How could we attract them more? And the opportunity that we have of bringing some voices here, which we don't often get to hear from, inshallah, we can hear their ideas. So anybody wants to take that?
Okay. I think it's a good goal to have not just Muslims, but a lot of other people come. But I think that's very, we kind of set our goals too big sometimes. And I think we should just, if we just each person concentrated on just one person that they want to take to the mosque, then we would have double the amount. So trying to plan, I think, grand scale events, they tend to not work. And people are always wondering, well, because everyone's kind of dissolving the responsibility amongst everyone, and then just the normal people who show up come. So if everyone just takes responsibility for just invite one person, then I think we would have a better turnout.
Maybe another idea, like you'd say, this afternoon you messaged me, could you share to the MSA? So getting that connection with the MSA, I know we're doing really great with the Friday lectures every Friday, and our MSA, we're very hard, like busy students and everything. I know, inshallah, next week we're gonna have a lecture. So maybe have the Friday night lecture, have it in Mines, let's say during lunchtime. That's when the kids, they love free lunch, students love free lunch. Or if not, just bring their lunch and listen to the lecture. So having that panel, introduce them, and then, hey, there's also a lecture here also Friday night.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Anybody else? Any questions or comments from the audience?
Make them hard. Go ahead.
What can we do as parents of kids in a public high school? I mean, I went to a public high school, but it feels like ages ago.
Right.
And I think, youth changes.
Right.
Not 100%, but there are things that are relevant when it comes to change. So what can a parent do?
I think that most parents, and I don't know because I don't have any kids and I can just be talking smoke out of my mouth, but yeah, from the kids' perspective, I think first of all is trust. You gotta trust your kid. You gotta trust yourself that you did great parenting, and you gotta trust your kids that they're gonna make the right decision. But not everyone makes the right decision all the time. And so you have to teach them how to like solve problems. You have to teach them how to be persevere through tough times. I think that's more important skills, because a lot of the parents get caught up in, are my parent or kids praying right? Are they saying the right dua? And then like the little like ritualistic things, I guess, when kind of the base is not there. Like I mentioned before, the base isn't there yet. So I think concentrating on them, like just trying to be a good person, make sure they have principles, like just very core basic principles, like always telling the truth. Not a lot of kids do that nowadays, like, or having set values and then putting on the Muslim or the Islamic perspective from it, because I think that's how I learned better, or that's how I got closer to Islam, because I was not that religious, I guess, coming up, and I always was trying to find ways to be a better person, right? And through communication skills or whatever. And then when I looked deeper, I realized that all of these things that I was learning on the internet, I was already set out. Like when you strip it down to the core principles of what Islam was trying to teach me, it was the same thing. And I was really amazed by that. So I was kind of looking in the wrong spot when I already had it the whole time, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So then I understood prayer more. Then I understood fasting more, because I understand like kind of the value first, and then I can apply it through those ways. So it's kind of like taking a homeless man in here and like spraying him with perfume. Like you can still tell he's dirty, right? And he still smells, but you got like take a shower first. You have to clean him up first, and then you can put the perfume. So then it's more, right? So that would be my advice, I guess.
Yeah, that's good. I'll jump in to answer that one too a little bit, because I just remembered a story. My aunt, I really admire her and take her as a role model of mine. She lives on the East Coast. She came here as a college student, like myself. But I think she's probably the number one person who's raised, in my eyes, who's done the best job raising her kids. She had an experience when her eldest daughter was 14 years old, and she shared this story that the daughter walks out of the bathroom with her hair dyed, the tips of her hair dyed a little blue, and she just swallowed it. She's like, sometimes you gotta let the little things go for the bigger things to stick. If she's gonna like stop on every little thing, it's not gonna work. And now, mashallah, her daughter's entered college, and her daughter is an artist. She draws about the suffering of a lot of Muslims. She wears the hijab. She's a public speaker too. Amazing, phenomenal things. It just took with like little compromises made for very big, gains and successes, mashallah. Well, any other questions or thoughts from the audience?
I'm curious if the topics that we discussed at the Islamic Center resonate with the youth. Do they like the themes that we discuss? And maybe another way of putting it is, what themes would they like to discuss?
That's a good point. So the question is, what are the topics that we're discussing for our lectures, for our khutbahs, and are they resonating, or what would be different things that you guys would want to be addressed? I think Ilman spoke to it a little bit about highlighting some of the beautiful aspects of our deen, but I want to give it to anybody to add to it or comment.
One topic that will resonate with the youth maybe common questions our friends ask and how to answer that. That's maybe one topic. Second topic, maybe have panelists of professionals, engineers, doctors, everyone, and have the youth look up to them and how do they struggle to college, common faces in workplace. So having that panel. So that's true. And then that's my idea.
Mm, more ideas, more topics.
Yeah, I mean, and you could broaden it, take it maybe out of the confinements of Islam to maybe things about culture, things about history, things about, whatever happens in the United States. Are there things you wanted to be discussed more of?
It's kind of hard to get kids in the mosque.
That's the truth.
So,
Exactly what I'm asking about.
yeah, and it's kind of hard to force them because if you try to force them to go, then they'll tie negative things to the mosque. They'll see going to the mosque as like kind of a chore instead of wanting to go to a mosque, which is kind of tricky.
Would there be interest in discussing, say, have a circle, have a panel discussion to discuss immigration policy in the U.S., social integration, what does it mean to you? Muslim identity, what does Muslim identity mean to you? How do you preserve Muslim identity? How do you, and what do you think of identity issues in general? And so on and so forth. Would things like that be of interest? I'm asking
Broad, right?
I think I'll comment on it a little bit. Some of these points, and I look back at my last 10 years, some of these things are a little over the head at that age. Especially if somebody who's born here, maybe Adam, does not think too often about what is immigration policy. As far as he's concerned, he's got a passport. What does he need to worry about? But some of the points that you highlight, I think, are very important. And I feel like more than a youth, it would be things that would benefit parents to understand what does social integration mean. What does peer pressure mean? And I think I have not experienced it. I was very fortunate. I actually went to a Christian college, very conservative. Alcohol was banned on campus. All of these things made it so much easy for me. And I look back at it and just in shock that how differently it would have been. And I think if it would take, I think, a lot of brainstorming to think of maybe creative ideas things that would bring younger people in, and whoever has those ideas, inshallah, the Islamic Center of Golden is gonna try its best to accommodate them. So please talk to us about that.
What immigration policy actually what's being discussed in the media today, for example. I
Right.
didn't mean, lawyer or legalistic perspective necessarily.
Yeah.
Issues are being discussed in the media quite a bit.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, those things do affect us because we are a minority in this country and are tied to an ethnicity. Such. So it's true.
Why don't you just ask if they care about it? They're here.
They're here.
How do you care about that? Yeah.
Maybe in 5 years he's gonna be worried. He's gonna think about it, and that's good. Well, if there's nothing else, I don't want to stand in the middle of food. But I'll close on one thing.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Alhamdulillah, I think being around a living number,
Right.
go around different sizes. But to my regret, I don't see a lot of youth
Uh-huh.
in the cycles.
Right.
And this is becoming a trend.
Right.
I'm from East Africa originally, and growing up, always saw this elderly brothers going to the cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And I see the same thing happening. The same trend is going on around the cycles. In Denver, we don't see a lot of youth. And youth are disinterested in the cycles. Whether
Right.
it's lectures, whether it's
Yeah.
you see sometimes even during Tarawih,
Uh-huh.
kids that are Islamically that have reached puberty age are playing with their cell phones. They're not interested in Islam.
Right.
So how do we attract? I mean, like the brother earlier said, something is not clicking.
Uh-huh.
So how do we? because the concern is, as a father also, I have teenagers.
Yeah.
My concern is, if you push them, they run away from you.
Right. Yeah.
But if you let it go, also, there's no desire.
Uh-huh.
So in the middle, as a father and as a brother Muslim, you are stuck. So you don't know where, I mean, how to bring this youth. I mean, even some masajids have tried youth activities and like that, but they're not. It's not clicking. So
Right.
so, if I may ask the panel, if you have any idea, how do, as elderly brothers, how do we interact with this youth that are running around? How do we interact them to come back to the house of Allah so they can benefit
Right.
us and they can benefit themselves?
That's a good question, and I bet a lot of parents have that similar question.
Yeah, I'll say that that is the million dollar question here, and I think that's a question for everyone here. What could we all do? And if I may just add, being in a more mature, developed community in Los Angeles, what I saw worked very well was when your kids see you practicing, putting Islam to full practice by maybe doing community service. When they see that you read a hadith about feeding people, feeding the needy, feeding hungry, if they actually see you do that, going to mission in downtown Denver, they're gonna be much more impacted by that. So seeing Islam in action in parents, I saw the kids being the most motivated by stuff like that. Or even if it was not going all the way down to downtown Denver, if it was just your neighbors, you actually took the hadith about taking neighbors seriously and got to know your neighbors and treated them with the best. Those things really struck with them, and all the culmination of all those little factors, encourage them to come to the masjid more too. And I think we could take that and maybe more approaches in the future about how to encourage youth, towards Islam, towards masajid.
Right, and I would recommend trying to first take away all the even the Islamic and the Muslim aspect of it. Is when was you have to listen to your. I would say listen to your kids first. Ask them about their days. Do you know what they do after school at work? Do you know their favorite food? Do you know their favorite basketball team? Ask them what's going on in their lives, and then they'll open up more to you, and they'll be more warm and receptive. And sometimes they won't even want to talk, and you shouldn't take that personally, because sometimes kids don't want to talk to their parents and they just had a rough day or a long day. Then don't take it personally. They just want time to themselves. And so that would be and kids too, it's just not a one-way street. Communication is not a one-way street. You gotta put in effort. If you want your parents to listen to you and give you privileges, then you have to show that you're responsible enough. Do little things around the house without them asking you to. And it just works. And once you take the little steps, then you can work towards bigger steps, like encouraging to go to the mosque and stuff like that. So that's my advice.
I think we could move to another question. Farid had his hand up. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, activities and so that we could all get together and even meet outside the masjid and have fun. Brother Dadi.
Coming back to Brother Abdul Rahman, we are trying our best to bring people to the masjid, but I have several occasions where people at the masjid actually judge people who come to the masjid and make them not to come to the masjid, especially the youth. When they come here, there's an occasion they used like they just came from the let's say hiking, and then they came to the masjid with their training pants. They came to the masjid with the training pants. They shouldn't do that. I said, brother, it's okay that they come to the masjid with that. It's better than they're coming to the mosque. With time, they will change, But don't just judge them just because the way they what do you call it, the dress, okay? Because they will run away from you. Even if they are your kids, if you don't like listen to them, they don't run away from you. Okay? So we as a community don't be judgmental, don't be negative to other people. Maybe they have something in their mind, But I told brother, there's a process. So they cannot just come here with everything hijab like good.
Right.
So she just alhamdulillah wear hijab and
Right.
we should listen to her story, the process that she's been through. My kids also, they have a lot of things in their mind and then one occasion came here, they have their shirt have like a face or something or an animal, that you shouldn't do this and that, and you should open your shirt and then back it, And there's one brother, they actually complained to me. They said, Didi, I don't want to come to the masjid. Why? Because I don't feel like I'm being accepted here. He's a very good brother and he was born here, he was raised here. He was like originally from Syria. But he had a complaint because these guys that came to the masjid and they rule the masjid, they are in the management of the masjid. They don't understand how kids were raised here. So,
Yeah, I think those are excellent.
make them out. And now I don't want to come to the masjid anymore. So we are trying our best to bring people to the masjid, but when they come to the masjid, we are easily judged them to negativity. So of course they're gonna run away.
Yeah.
This is for me and for other people, this is our experience. I want to share with everybody. We should be more careful when judging anybody here, and let's put some positivity in our empire.
Right.
Yeah. Being more merciful towards one another in the men's side and the women's side as well. Inshallah, having that opportunity to be more welcoming. Rather than putting up more barriers and restrictions on how to come here, making the door more easy to go through. Yeah. Quick.
Positivity on the second of the comments, especially on positivity. Given the kind of Islamic center that we have, minds, lots of students, I think we should, when we find out about some award that the student is founded, we should announce it. Scholarship, some achievement, some milestone. We should as a community celebrate each other's achievements. So that would be one way of building community, making us proud of each other and each other's achievements and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. The community starts by actually getting to know each other, what everyone's doing. So, inshallah, that would be a great point that we could all do. I'll close, inshallah, and I'll close on one question. And this will be for everyone, actually, on this panel. Starting with Camellia, what advice would you give yourself from 10 years ago? Things that you've learned.
So this is actually the question that my cousin asked me because she's about to go to college, also in a very minority Islamic. And then, so one thing is be proud of your identity. While I was in high school, I only have one or two of my closest friends who only know I was a Muslim. It wasn't until in college I was proud of who I am. It wasn't until I tell to my friends, hey, I will be right back. In 5 minutes, I'm going to pray really quick. So every time they know when I'm out of the classroom, oh, she's praying. Or every time in a hot pot dinner, they know I always bring the halal meat so I always bring the meat every time we have a gathering. So I would tell myself, be proud of who you are. It will make your life much easier, to the kids out there also. If you need to pray, just say you're going to pray. Don't hide that I'm just going to hide in this corner and pray. So just that one thing, be proud of your identity.
That's very good. Ilman, anything you would add? Advice to yourself from 10 years ago. What were you doing 10 years ago?
I don't know. I would say enjoy it. I think I spent a lot of my youth worrying about what was going to happen first in high school, and then always worrying what was going to happen in college, and then worrying about things after college. And I think that brought me away from enjoying what I had right now, like what was going on and right here that was right in front of me. And now I realize that I wasted a lot of time. So I would say use your time efficiently and take it one day at a time, because it's never going to go the way that you plan it ever. So if you just step by step work towards your goals every day, then good things will happen.
For Adam, we'll say 5 years.
Let's see. I think growing up, I always worried about what other people thought of me, and I think it was kind of dumb. Like now that I'm in high school, I kind of think back and I kind of regret always thinking about what other people thought of me or trying to please other people. But like now, kind of older, just do the right thing. And also back then, I was kind of scared of telling people that I was Muslim, but now this year is when I really kind of told all my friends, and I think I've become a better person from that.
Well, Jazakallah khairan. Did you want to say anything? Or?
No, I just want to thank everyone coming here, because that means you guys actually valued our opinions when you read the ad, or you just wanted free food. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone, because then like I said before, we have a platform to talk and discuss, and it shouldn't just be me, Adam, and Camila every time. I think maybe we should even make this like a monthly thing and have different people, so then we have different perspectives. Because I'm not telling everything I said today, I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm just offering my perspective, and if it helps you, then you can take little bits and aspects of it and apply it or not. And so that was my goal, I guess, for tonight.
That's very true. You can ask them. There were a lot more questions on that list, and we had to just avoid it because it was going to be too much. Inshallah, I make dua that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us to gather together. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to learn from one another, and may He make us better people. May He make us more merciful towards our friends. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Jazakallah khairan. If everyone could please give a round of applause for the panelists. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khairan. And